Welcome, everyone. I'm calling the February 22nd City Council meeting to order. And due to the Governor's Proclamation 20-28 relating to the COVID-19 emergency and open public meetings, this meeting tonight is being held remotely. At this point, we'll take a moment to take a roll call of the council members in attendance. So please stay here when I call your name. Councilmember DiMichele.
Here.
Thank you. Deputy Council President Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Joe.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Martz.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
Here.
And thank you. And Council President Walsh.
Here.
Great. So we have all 7 council members in attendance tonight. I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, but could you please mute your microphones, but feel free to join in with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda this evening is special business. ID 1053. We will be doing a recognition of a local author, Donna, Barba, Higuera. I'd like to invite Arts Commissioner Rachel Wright to speak. Rachel is an entrepreneur in creative industries who serves on the city's Creative Area District Advisory Board and Arts Commission. Rachel will be introducing special guest, Donna Barba Higuera, and welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much. So tonight, I'd also like to welcome Donna. Donna is a distinguished author of middle grade and picture books that weave together history, folklore, sci-fi, and her own life experience. She's also an optometrist. The American Library Association just awarded Donna with the Newbery Medal. Her third book, The Last Quintista, is honored as this year's most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. 2022 marks the 100th anniversary of the Newbery, and with this honor, her work joins the ranks of classics like A Wrinkle in Time and Beverly Cleary's Dear Mr. Henshaw. Donna also achieved top ranks with the American Library Association in 2020. Her book, Lupe Wong Won't Dance, was included on their Best Books for Youth list, while she also earned Pacific Northwest Booksellers Award and the Sid Fleischman Award for Children's Humor. Congratulations, Donna, from the Issaquah Arts Commission. We're very happy you've made Issaquah your home. And Mayor Polly, I now turn the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for joining us and providing all that background. Donna, we want to acknowledge and thank you for the contributions to our local community, and we really want to congratulate you on the 2022 Newbery Award. In recognition, we would like to present you with a certificate of appreciation, which we normally would do in person. I'm not even sure if you can see it, but I will read it for you and we'll make sure to get it your way. This certificate is hereby awarded to Donna Barba Higuera, recipient of the prestigious 2022 Newbery Medal for The Last Quintista. In recognition of your outstanding contribution to the literary world and the Issaquah community, we celebrate you on this 22nd day of February 2022. So Donna, thank you. I think it's an auspicious date, 2/22/22, to add to the certificate. That was kind of fun. But I also wanted to share with you a story. My children grew up in Washington State and grew up in our school system. And the most exciting day that they had was the day that the Scholastic News came out at school. And they got to go through and they got to circle everything they wanted. And they would come home and there would be so many books selected under Goosebumps and Captain Underpants. And they knew they were going to ask me for like 6 to 9 books, and they were going to get 1 book plus any book that they picked that had an honor award to it. So they knew that if there was a Newbery Award, or I think it was a Caldecott Award, they could get a second book. And so we filled the library with Goosebumps, Captain Underpants, and all these other amazing, great novels. So I did go this weekend online to buy your book, but did not get the one with the medal. So I had to put my own little gold sticker on it so that I could put this in my brand new grandson's library so that he can read it and he'll learn that Oma will buy him anything on that book list that's got that golden circle. Just to tell you how excited we are that an author in our community will be awarded such a high honor. And then I wanted to offer you an opportunity to say a few words to council and for council to say a few words to you. So Donna.
Well, first, I want to thank you so much. I love my community, and I want to say also that the teachers and librarians in the Issaquah School District are phenomenal. They have created readers out of my children, and they've been really supportive of me and other local writers. We have so much information and book fodder when we're writing with our own communities, and Issaquah has provided that for me. My first book, Lupe Wong Won't Dance, is set in Issaquah, and it's one of those books that I brought home the funny stories that my kids would bring home from school, and the friendships and those things that I wanted to show, but also about my community. And Lupe's it's a made up school, but her school, the mascot is Sammy Sockeye. And there's so much about my community that I love, and it gives me great writing material. But I just want to thank the local teachers and librarians who have been so supportive and have been wonderful for my children and their friends in creating readers and writers.
Donna, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Councilmember DiMichele, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Donna, I just wanted you to know that I was blown away when I saw the news about you receiving the Newbery Award.
Me
It's
too.
undoubtedly the most prestigious award for children and young adult literature in the United States, if not the world. So congratulations. Issaquah is so proud of you. I started my professional life as a teacher of middle school students a long time ago, way back in the day when we thought middle schoolers couldn't handle hard or sensitive issues. And as a teacher, I quickly learned that middle schoolers are eager and able to understand complex world issues, as well as sensitive personal topics, as well as many other in-depth topics. But they didn't have the books and the characters back then to help them, especially books that reflected the reality of their culture, language, race, or gender. So I just want to thank you so much for speaking so clearly to an audience of young people. And I am looking forward to reading your book as soon as I possibly can. So thank you so much. And congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. So Donna, thank you. And just, I'm sure you're aware, we're so awfully proud of what you've done and accomplished, and very excited to be able to read this book to my little grandbaby. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda this evening, I can pull it back up, is audience comments. And for those who have submitted the online form to make comments, your name will be called shortly. For those who have joined us tonight and would like to make comments but did not sign up in advance, you can still raise your virtual hand. And if you're on the phone, this would be doing press *3. And if you have joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This can vary by device, but one option may be to go to the participant panel and choose the raise hand icon in the lower right-hand corner. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak for general audience comments or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Yes, Mayor, we have 4 individuals who've signed up in advance to speak, and then I do see an additional hand being raised by David Toyer. The first person who signed up to speak is Ken Konigsmark. Ken, in just a moment here, I will make you a panelist. You should be able to unmute and can also choose to turn your video on.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
You're a little bit quiet. Maybe talk a little bit closer to the computer. Welcome, Ken.
Well, you get my full face view. I'm sorry. First, my congratulations to Donna as well, because we have so much talent in this community we don't even know about. And that's just a perfect example of that. So anyway, good evening. My name is Ken Koenigsmark. I live at 5713 285th Avenue Southeast in Issaquah, and I'm here representing Our Savior Lutheran Church tonight in regards to the rezone request that's on the agenda before you tonight. I'm going to start out just saying we seek to do something really good that will benefit the larger Issaquah community and assist the city in meeting some of its highest priorities for human services and comp plan goals. We wish to use our 4-acre property in partnership with the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank to enable multiple uses on our site while providing much needed and expanded public benefits in helping those who need assistance in Issaquah. Our church owns 2 parcels on Front Street. One is already zoned MFH and the other is zoned SFSL. Like many churches, we've experienced a downturn in membership and contributions, and we must find new purpose and partnerships if we are to continue. We intentionally sought out to partner with the Issaquah Food Bank to create a win-win-win for both of our organizations, but also for the larger community. Our church's mission calls us to use our resources beneficially to help those in need, and we can find no better partner to work with to do that than the food bank, which cannot meet the current demand at its existing facility. This partnership is not a pie-in-the-sky dream. Rather, it's very far along. We've made great progress in creating draft terms for an agreement and a conceptual site plan for how to relocate the food bank to our property. We hope to reach a finalized agreement on this partnership within just the next 2 to 4 months, so this is moving quickly. We are seeking a rezone to directly support the food bank's immediate need to relocate to our site, expand capacity, to create opportunity for offering broader social services, and to potentially offer affordable housing opportunities in the future. As we all know, there have been significant changes since the last comp plan update that include skyrocketing housing costs, fewer options for those needing affordable housing, rising inflation and food costs, and thus greatly increased demands for food bank support. These drastic societal changes provide a solid reason to include our rezone request in the docket this year. The limitation under the SFSL zoning of concern is the 30-foot building height limit. And when you consider a truck loading dock with the sliding doors and such, we're not sure yet if 30 feet will suffice. That is the main driver for this immediate need. Further, our rezone application is unique compared to other rezone requests in that it's requested by 2 nonprofits who are providing public services. We have no profit-making development intentions and would provide greatly needed public benefits that directly support the city's comp plan and human services strategic plan. This truly is a win-win-win for all of us. Thus, we request your support tonight to include our rezone request in the 2022 docket. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I also realized there was a few additional instructions that I'd like to read that I skipped, and just so Ken knows, he followed them completely, but for the rest of our speakers tonight, make sure to direct your comments to the whole council and not individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized, please unmute your microphone. State your name, address, and relationship to the city, and speak clearly and pause frequently. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes and remute your microphone when done. If you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed. You're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if you are able. Personal attacks, obscene language, and derogatory remarks and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Citizen comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. The city takes comments seriously, and we thank you for taking the time to address us. City Clerk, let's have our next speaker on.
Yes, next we have Mike Bresco. Mike, in just a moment, I'll make you a panelist. You should see the option to unmute and can also choose to turn your video on.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted and you should be able to hear me and see me. Okay, my name is Mike Bresco. I reside at 2433 222nd Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. I am the chair of the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. So that's my relationship to the community. First, I'd like to thank City Council members and the community of Issaquah for the support that you've given to the food bank. It has been substantial and meaningful, and we greatly appreciate that. And then also, one of the hats that I wear is a planning commissioner for the city of Sammamish. And so I'd like to thank the Community Planning and Development Department for the work that they do. And I'll mention that I have a sense of the challenge that it takes to weigh the workload that's coming up and balancing that with the needs of the community. So the request that we're making to reconsider the zoning request and docketing it for this coming year, I frankly don't take that very lightly. It is be very helpful if this can pass. First, I'd like to provide a very brief background about the food and clothing bank and its woeful space needs. We're currently spread across 3 sites and home offices. This increases operational costs, causes multiple handling of our inventory, and decreases the effectiveness of our staff. We've been actively searching for another site for at least 3 years, really probably longer than that if we consider some, kind of looking around briefly prior. The Our Savior Lutheran Church site is without a doubt the most promising opportunity that we've seen from both the location and the possibility for community partnership with Our Savior's congregation. The concept that Ken had mentioned that we've drafted for the food bank is to have the food bank located on the north side of the existing building. The north entrance is envisioned to be for the food bank and the south for the church. The concept is not fully refined by an architect. So like Ken mentioned about height requirements, we're not fully sure whether we'd be able to meet the current SFSL zoning limits. We may be able to do that. But having said that, really the more important reason for requesting the change to an MFM or MFH zone is the potential that the site offers for additional services, and in particular for workforce or more affordable housing, which we all know is such a great need in our area and especially in Issaquah. Based on the concept that we've drafted so far, and again, it's a concept, things could change, but we've put some effort into that. The best location for housing would actually be above the food bank. And that construction, as you might imagine, would require adding additional foundation to the current ideas we have for where the food bank would be located. So, stronger foundation, so forth, adds to the upfront cost. So to make that possibility work, we will require other partners or funding sources. It is beyond the current mission and scope of the food bank itself. In order to pull other partners in, they would need to have some sense, some certainty that the zoning would enable that housing. So in other words, for us to make this work for the long term, we need consideration in terms of the zoning here in the near future. So that's the crux of it right there. I hope that you'll reconsider the docketing of the zoning request. And that would end my comments.
Thank you, Mike. City Clerk, who's next up to speak this evening?
Next, we have Connie Fletcher. Connie, in just a moment here, I'll make you a panelist. You can then unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
How's that? Oh boy, that's kind of a small picture. Hi, Connie Fletcher. Let's see. There we go. I'm a resident of Issaquah. My address is 321 Northwest Dogwood Street. I'm also a member of Our Savior Lutheran Church and on their church council. And I have been a volunteer for the food bank, among other organizations in Issaquah for many, many years. And I'm asking for your consideration of the zoning change, as others are, for the church property to allow for the siting of a new Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. Our church has been a partner with the Food and Clothing Bank for 50 years, the entire duration of its institution. Since then, we've hosted countless food and clothing drives, including those for the entire community. And we provided the fellowship hall as a site for the Lunch for the Break program when it expanded from one elementary school to the entire school district. So we've been very, very involved with the food bank over many years, and with many projects going on. Our church believes that our Christian mission is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and care for the needy. This project means a furthering of this mission-driven work by using our resources, which are our building and our grounds, as well as providing expanded opportunities of service for our community and our members. The city of Issaquah many years ago attempted to site a human services campus that would provide our neighbors with the resources they need in one location. I was involved in this effort, and we never found a location that was affordable or accessible. This project that we're considering now provides our community with the facility to make that accomplishment happen. Many of our Savior volunteers volunteer for both the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and also for the Community Meals Program. We see the faces of our neighbors in need on a regular basis. The current COVID crisis has made it very clear to staff, volunteers, and clients that the current food bank facility is seriously inadequate. The service delivery model had to change drastically this year, in the last 2 years. And it was made more complicated by the fact that the facilities for food bank that stored the food were spread all over the community. It's very, very clear that something has to happen, because it's just not adequate to meet the needs of our community and the people in need. To boot, the clothing bank had to completely drop their services altogether. And this has been a hard winter. As you know, it's been extraordinarily cold, and we had no provision for providing for coats or boots or anything else for them. Our community really needs a new food and clothing bank right now. Last Thursday night, I served the community meal. A woman who has been a regular since the COVID crisis hit, and who has always appeared to be embarrassed by accepting our help, thanked each one of our servers and expressed how important this food is to her and her son. She said, "Food at the grocery stores is so expensive now, I just can't afford it. This food makes all the difference." The food bank and the meals program are important to this community, and not just for the homeless, but for a significant portion of our families who struggle on a regular basis with food insecurity. We can do better, and we should do better. Please approve this rezone so we can proceed with planning for this important project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. I'm just going to add a point of clarification before we go to any more speakers. We've had 3 speakers so far talking about the rezoning and the docket of comprehensive plan updates. So for anybody watching at home, I just want to make sure everyone is clear. The council's consideration tonight is just to decide whether or not to study the issue. They will not be actually making approval of a rezone tonight. They will make a decision whether or not to study it. City Clerk, who is our next speaker?
Next, we have Josh Friedman. Josh, in just a moment, I'll make you a panelist. You'll then have the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
Hello, can you see and hear me? Excellent, thank you. My name's Josh Friedman, and I'm a lawyer representing Our Savior Lutheran Church. Thanks to Ken, Connie, and Mike, this evening I have 3 very difficult acts to follow, so I much appreciate that. I hope the council members received the letter that I transmitted this morning, and I hope they found it helpful. The church's requested rezone and redesignation would ensure that the food bank can relocate, that it can expand, and that it can best accommodate the needs of families and working people who are facing food insecurity in the Issaquah community. The church and the food bank eagerly want to deploy their resources to get this job done. Tonight, they ask the council to support these goals by allowing this application to be reviewed in 2022. The partnership between the church and the food bank is much more than the sum of its parts. Working together, these nonprofits will deliver greater public benefit as multiple uses sharing a single parcel. As the council members might recall, supporting multiple uses on a shared site is a goal that the city emphasizes often. If any council member needs further information, we will remain on the call and be available to answer any questions that might arise during your legislative deliberation. If I understand the council's procedures correctly, I believe that council members can call on us by using a quick motion to suspend the rules. We would be happy to provide any support that we can. We appreciate all the work that council members and city staff do for the community. And thank you.
Thank you, Josh. City Clerk, are there any other additional speakers this evening?
Yes, David Toyer. David, in just a moment here, I'll make you a panelist. You should be able to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
we can.
David Toyer, I'm with Toyer Strategic Advisors, and we represent the property owners of a parcel that's known through our docket application as the Wildwood property. We've submitted that property for a redesignation and rezone from low density residential to multifamily residential based off of the characteristics of the property, as well as the adjacent development patterns in zones proximate to the site. It is also within walking distance of multiple transit stops, particularly within a quarter mile of transit stops along the King County Metro route number 271. And it also abuts numerous recreation amenities and is within walking distance to quite a few local businesses. We would appreciate council's consideration of advancing this proposal forward in the docket for further review and evaluation. We understand that one of the recommendations on the table is to forward this in the process to 2023 with potentially a decision at the end of 2023 or early 2024. That is an appropriate alternative. However, we would respectfully request the opportunity to move forward in this year's process so that the owners of the property have the opportunity to truly evaluate what is feasible for development of that site. And there may not be an opportunity missed because of a delay in being allowed to be considered under the docket process. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have this evening. Otherwise, we did submit a couple of letters to the record and provided testimony to Planning Commission as well. Thank you.
Thank you, David. City Clerk, is there anyone else this evening wishing to speak to the council?
I don't see anyone else with a hand raised. I'll just give a quick last call here. If there's anyone who wishes to speak tonight, please quickly send me, the host, a message or raise your virtual hand. Let me just monitor the list for a moment. I don't see that anyone else is wishing to speak.
Thank you, City Clerk. So we did have multiple speakers tonight speak about the docket, which is an action item for council. Representatives for many different groups and 2 properties talked about wishing the city council to add or include the review of proposed zoning changes for these 2 parcels. So just a clarification again, getting added to the docket does not mean rezones are approved. It means they are being considered, and there is a lot of work that would be done in between council adding it to the docket and council reviewing the rezones. So thank you everyone who spoke. Just a reminder that if folks are watching at home and want to provide written comments to the council, you can do that at any time by writing to the city council at issaquah.gov. And then I'd like to turn it over to Council President Walsh and ask if there were any email comments to summarize on any of tonight's agenda topics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did receive 2 emails from the projects in consideration to be added to the docket, advocating for their approval, but those were the only comments we received. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the next item this evening is committee and regional reports, and I will call out each council member. Let's start with Council Member Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, Cascade Water Alliance will have the regular board meeting tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. The meetings for the chamber liaison have started. We had our first meeting on Friday. The chamber expressed some concern about the broad language in the business license ordinance that's currently in front of the Economic Development Commission, or was read to the Economic Development Commission recently. They're also concerned about the ordinance asking workers to police the business, or small businesses having to have a burden of policing and reporting, which may be in excess of what they currently do. We updated the chamber board on the police chief search, and we updated them on some of the staffing additions that are coming to the police department. Finally, I'm the chair of the LTAC, and we had our first kind of orientation meeting with Chamber ED Kathy McQuarrie. There are 3 other meetings set this week to meet the other new members for the committee. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Next up, we have Councilmember DeMichelle.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. On Tuesday, February 15th, I attended the Connect to Community Advisory Group. The meeting was devoted to final deliberations and selection of the vendor for the Community Information Exchange Project. The advisory group did select a vendor, and contract negotiations are moving forward. Then on Wednesday, February 16th, I attended the Regional Transit Committee. Metro General Manager Terry White announced that Metro's March service change will be delayed due to adverse impacts of the Omicron variant, which included significant staff and driver shortages. Metro currently has ample service available to meet rider demand and will assess the need for increases when preparing for future service changes. White also addressed Metro's response to safety concerns, which have escalated over the past few months. Metro has added transit police officers to help patrol buses, added security officers at bus stops and transit centers, improved response times for emergency assistance calls, and added behavioral health specialists to conduct outreach to bus riders in need of help. In other business at the RTC, Puget Sound Regional Council presented their regional transportation plan for our comment, and Metro Customer Service provided an overview of improvements to the ORCA card system that will be implemented in March. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember DeMichelle. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The King Conservation District Advisory Committee met on February 8th. We developed and adopted our 2022 work plan, and of note, the SCA, the Sound Cities Association Caucus, added a few items to that work plan, including strategy sessions for topics of interest to jurisdictions, and Issaquah, me representing Issaquah, specifically requested a strategy session on wildfire preparedness, which is an issue of concern for our community. So that is added to our work plan, and I will follow up with council once we have had that strategy session. We also advocated for more information about the financials and transparency of the King Conservation District. And our next meeting will be April 12th, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Hunt. Next up, we have Councilmember Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. The Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors met on February 10th in a virtual meeting. Deputy President Hall, Councilmember Martz, and I attended the meeting. There were a couple of points of interest from the fire chief's report. Eastside Fire and Rescue has 20 new recruits that joined the department in mid-February. Even with that, they're still shorthanded as a result of COVID. They are projecting that they will be up to full staff by midsummer. Chief Clark also reported that PFAS is likely to fall under the control of the Model Toxins Control Act, or MTCA. Eastside Fire and Rescue continues to seek grants that will no longer be available if PFAS becomes an MTCA substance. Pilot testing is in progress at the Eastside Fire and Rescue headquarters on a remediation where carbon is injected into the ground and serves as a barrier to extract PFAS from groundwater. We're expecting the initial results from this remediation in March. Also, on a positive note, Eastside Fire and Rescue was successful in securing over $900,000 in FEMA reimbursement for COVID-19 related expenses. In regular business before the board approved the wildfire prevention program. The program will be funded in 2022 out of ending fund balance. If the program is continued beyond 2022, additional funding will need to be included in the Eastside Fire and Rescue operating budget. Eastside Fire Rescue is starting a strategic planning process, and the process and the key dates were outlined to the board. On another topic, the King County Growth Management Council will meet on March 2nd at 4 p.m. in a virtual meeting, and at this time the agenda has not been set. That concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. Next up, we have Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Councilmember Martz. The Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board, GMPB, has its next meeting on Thursday, March 3rd from 10 a.m. until noon. The agenda has not been released yet. We will have one rollover, which is review of Black Diamond's request for conditional approval of their comp plan, but I don't know what else will be on the agenda. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee met on Wednesday, February 9th from 7 till 9 p.m. In terms of actionable items, there was a conversation about the regional transportation plan update, which I'm going to discuss a little further. I sent material out to council and we'll be discussing in for good of the order this evening. And then there's a conversation about the King County homeless count this year and about how they're going to be moving to sampling rather than attempting to get an absolute count. I think there were a number of questions about how that's going to work and making sure that it generates good numbers that human services organizations can use to respond and plan programs around. And so PIC is looking forward to hearing back on those questions. My hope is at the next PIC meeting. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Councilmember Martz. Deputy Council President Hall.
Thank you. No report this evening.
Oh, Council President Walsh.
Thank you. I have two reports. First, on February 9th, I attended the Affordable Housing Committee meeting. During that, we approved the 2022 work plan. And then we also got into reviewing the countywide planning policies. The Growth Management Planning Council has a requirement that the Affordable Housing Committee, which is kind of a subcommittee of them, strengthen the housing policies. And so before the meeting, the SCA caucus had a robust conversation about the right balance between local control and unified actions. And so we were able to convey that to the larger committee. This will be the major piece of work for the Affordable Housing Committee for the year. So we got it off to a strong start. And then on February 11th, the Issaquah leadership or Issaquah City leadership met with the Issaquah School District leadership. And so there were a few things from that meeting that I just wanted to convey. First of all, March 1st is the first date for Cougar Mountain Middle School. And so that's very exciting for our community. They said that dedication ceremonies for both that and the other new school will be coming. And then it's a little bit dated 11 days ago, but they had some COVID updates. They said they were pretty much back to pre-COVID attendance rates of 97%. They have a bunch of new substitute teachers and bus drivers. And then they're going to be running 2 more vaccine clinics with Costco for 5 to 11-year-olds plus adult boosters. And at that point, they were saying they were looking ahead to the masking changes. And since then, they have responded and said that they will go with what public health says, but that they will always allow masks, and they look at it as mask optional, not no masks. We discussed enrollment projections, which are slightly down due to larger graduating classes, lower elementary school enrollment related to COVID, and then particularly a smaller incoming kindergarten class. They updated us on school safety. They said they have one school resource officer left from Sammamish Police Department at Skyline, but otherwise they've hired, trained, and deployed 4 new school safety officers, which are their own staff. And they started with 4 of the 6 middle schools, plus they have some school safety officers who float between the schools. They said concerns about behavior issues continue, but they're also making other efforts around entry vestibules, fencing, and cameras, and all other things. And then one of the big comments or points of conversation was their superintendent search. So they said they're conducting focus groups, reaching out to stakeholders, and sending out surveys. And they expect that March 21st through the 23rd, their final 2 or 3 candidates will be on site for interviews and a public forum, and they are hoping to make a choice by April 1st. So lots of stuff going on with the school district. Glad to meet with them and continue that conversation. That ends my report.
Thank you, Council President Walsh. Next item on our agenda this evening is the mayor's report. Starting off, there will be no executive session this evening. A bit of information about board and commission recruitment. Issaquah is continuing to accept applications for all city boards and commissions. Our boards and commissions cover a broad range of topics: arts, economic development, environmental issues, growth, and even international diplomacy. We value a variety of perspectives and life experiences and encourage people of all backgrounds to apply. Members serve without compensation but may be eligible to participate in the city's stipend program. Please help us spread the word about our various board and commission opportunities. And to learn more about boards and commissions and to apply, go to issaquah.gov/apply. Issaquah is still accepting nominations for the Issaquah Hall of Fame Award, a top honor for making a lasting contribution to our community. Each year, the mayor and council presidents select a person to induct into the Issaquah Hall of Fame for their exemplary record of inspiration, leadership, and service. The award will be presented at the Chamber of Commerce annual Issaquah Community Awards event on March 31st. Nominations can be submitted at issaquah.gov/nominate. And the deadlines for nominations is March 1st at 5 p.m. The Capital Finance Community Task Force last met on February 8th to refine their recommendations for new revenue tools the city should pursue in order to better fund infrastructure projects. The task force will finish making its recommendations on priorities at the next meeting, March 2nd, from 6 to 8 p.m. And a couple of upcoming events. Green Issaquah is hosting a volunteer event. Help remove blackberry bushes and other invasive species in downtown Issaquah. On March 5th, Green Issaquah volunteers will be preparing the area at the Emily Darst Park Trail for a tree planting event. The work group will meet near the Pickering Barn at 9 a.m. and walk to the work site along the Pickering Trail. This event is rain or shine, so dress for the weather and wear sturdy shoes, a mask, and bring some water. More information is available on the city website or at issaquah.greencitypartnerships.org. Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park is excited to announce that they are hosting a half marathon from Marymore Park to Lake Sammamish State Park. The race will begin at 6 a.m. at Marymore. Please visit the Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park website for more information and registration. And we will be having an open house on Title 18 on the natural environment. The city is hosting a virtual open house to answer the public's questions on the final natural environment discussion draft. The virtual house will be on March 8th at 4 p.m. and is free to attend. To register and receive a meeting link, please visit the city's website. And I'm really excited to announce that City Hall in-person services will resume on March 1st with a Tuesday, Thursday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. schedule. And that concludes the mayor's report. The next item of business this evening is the consent calendar, and this calendar was distributed to council in advance. If authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. I do want to let the city clerk provide information on a correction to one of the consent calendar items. City clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to point out that there was a correction noticed to consent calendar item B, the minutes of the February 1st council study session, under the list of attendees to strike Stacy Goodman and insert Russell Joe. Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele, for noticing that error. With council's approval of the consent calendar tonight, you will be approving that revised version which was circulated.
Thank you, City Clerk. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
They have.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? And if so, could you please indicate in the chat for me? If not, could I have somebody make a motion? Council President Walsh?
Thank you. I would like to move approval of the consent calendar as modified, I guess.
With the correction to the minutes. Thank you. And Deputy Council President Hall?
Thank you. I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded, and I will turn it over to the city clerk to call the roll.
Starting with Councilmember Marks.
Sorry, you caught me flat-footed. Aye.
Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
Council President Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
Councilmember Joe.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 noes. Mayor, you're muted.
Thank goodness we are going back into chambers soon. I said that passes unanimously, and we will now move on to regular business where we have 2 items. So the first item is AB 8311, and it is the Recreation Scholarship Program. The request before council this evening is to approve the resolution, and the council last considered this item at the January 18th City Council meeting. I'd like to invite Melissa Ching from Parks and Community Services to make a presentation. Welcome, Melissa.
Mayor, this is Director Jeff Watling. I made it as well. Thank you. Melissa Ching is joining us. Good evening, Council. This has been a travel day for me, so it was uncertain if I was going to make it back, but I'm here. So you have me, as well as Melissa, who's been very, very involved in this work with the recreation team. Tisha, I believe you're able to share the PowerPoint as that's coming up. Just a quick overview. We were with you last month on January 18th to talk about this topic. We're coming back to you tonight with a go next slide, with the goal and purpose of seeking your authorization to approve this resolution that'll amend the city's recreation scholarship program and repeal the prior program, which was under resolution 2014-13. Next slide. So some quick background. We touched on some of this for the study session, but also for the listening audience. Our current recreation scholarship program was adopted in 2014 with that resolution. About halfway through last year in 2021, one of our work plan goals within the recreation group was to review the scholarship program. In particular, to look at how we might address some of the challenges we've seen with access to the funds. The scholarship program was reliant upon donations and funds, and often that didn't mesh with need as we saw in the community. So as we reviewed those changes, we brought those before you at the meeting on January 18th, and then also while we were looking at addressing that one primary issue, also sought your feedback on a number of other policy questions and areas of the program that we might want to consider changing. And so we're here tonight with our recommendation. The primary proposal, as I mentioned, was to modify this program to an actual fee assistance program, or from that fee assistance program to a fee reduction model. I know at the study session we had a little bit more of an explanation of what that meant. In essence, what that will allow us to do is to discount the fees for residents and not be so reliant on revenue, donation revenue to cover the full cost of that fee. As we make this proposed shift to a fee reduction model, we've certainly found that donations and sponsorships that come from residents as well as service clubs and other community groups are very beneficial. And we, even as we make this shift, there will be ample opportunity for those same groups to help through donations and sponsorships to support our recreation programs, specifically whether it's summer day camps or any of our other youth enrichment programs or senior center programs, etc. Next slide. So this slide just gives an overview of really what we discussed, some of those categories within the Recreation Scholarship Program on the 18th, and some of the direction of recommendation you're seeing tonight. That again, it really directly came from your feedback. Thanks so much at the study session. So first, we're looking at transitioning, as I said, to this fee reduction model that allows the city to discount program fees. In terms of eligibility of ages, the recommendation before you, the resolution before you, would be for adults within the city of Issaquah, but then for youth 18 and under who reside within the Issaquah School District. So the geographic eligibility for youth would remain the same, and that's looking at the Issaquah School District. This was a discussion on not only in the study session, but thank you, Deputy President Hall, for your questions earlier today. We did take a look at this and compare it with our neighboring cities. And after discussion with administration and the mayor, even though a number of our cities around us provide scholarships for residents only, we thought in this first adjustment, sticking with our longstanding policy of providing scholarships for youth within the school district felt a good first step to be consistent with the program as is. So that's what we are recommending tonight, and then coming back with a one-year review when we have some actual data. In terms of the tiers of scholarships, the recommendation before you has 3 tiers, like the current program, but they're adjusted slightly. Those tiers would be a 50%, a 70%, and a 90% eligibility based upon financial need. We would, with this 50, 70, 90 tier, we would eliminate the $10 minimum program fee. So this represents a slight change and a little bit of a best practice as we looked at some of our neighboring cities, in that from an equity standpoint, that 10% fee that residents would be required would in essence be different than what right now is a $10 minimum fee. So in some cases, depending on the program they're signing up for, that 10% might be slightly less than $10. In some cases, it might be slightly more than $10. Our income eligibility tiers, we looked at our other city financial assistance programs and made sure they're consistent with those programs. And then we also, in the recommendation tonight, are recommending a $450 per individual maximum cap and eliminating the per family cap, again, based on your feedback. Thanks for that, Council. Next slide. So the recommendation is that you approve this resolution amending our city's recreation scholarship program. Next slide. With your action tonight, we would plan on proceeding with implementation of this new adjusted program for our upcoming spring summer registrations, which start in early March. And as I mentioned briefly before, as we gather data with this new program, we would like to come back, provide an annual report in Q1 of 2023 that would look at participation levels, look at the geographic distribution of scholarship participation, and then have some clarity on the financial assistance totals that we saw for the year. Next slide. That may be it. So that's the end of the staff report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Watling, and welcome back. Does council have any questions before we look at a motion? Yeah, I'm checking in the chat box. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Watling, I had a question about the scholarships or the programs that are not eligible for a scholarship. One of them, you talked about contracted camps, but I was interested in what are the examples of specialty programs where the scholarships would not apply? If you could just give me a little bit of a background on that so I could understand it.
You bet. Thanks for that question, Councilmember Joe. So yeah, a specialty program would consist of, for example, at the pool, we offer private lessons, and a number of those programs that again are probably fit more on the scale of private good than public good, and felt that those type of specialty level programs were something that didn't feel eligible, and that I think the goal of the scholarship program is really looking at overall public good and how that meshes. So it's primarily some of those specialized private one-on-one programs.
So would it be fair to say that we're trying to keep the scholarship program to the basic, programs of our scholarship Parks Department work plan, so to speak, so that everyone has a basic chance at all the programs, but the specialty programs and the extra things are not necessarily included in the resolution?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I would want to clarify, even with my example of swim lessons, our full menu of general swim lessons would still be eligible for scholarship programs. So in some cases, these specialty programs, there is access, resident access to the same type of program, just in more of our general lesson program.
Great, thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
I am not seeing any other questions at this time. Would anyone care to make a motion? And if so, please indicate in the chat. Council President Walsh.
Thank you. I would move to approve resolution number 2022-05, replacing the current recreation scholarship program and repealing resolution number 2014-13.
Deputy Council President Hall.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's open it up for council discussion. And if you would like to make comments or ask a question, please indicate in the chat. Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Just very briefly, I wanted to thank Parks and Rec Department for putting forward this ordinance with, I think, a lot of response to what we said earlier. I wanted to particularly point out the inclusion of a hardship scholarship, recognizing that there are sometimes circumstances under which people might not qualify for the regular scholarship, but would be qualified for a hardship scholarship. And I really appreciated the flexibility that was built into that proposal. So I will be supporting this, and thank you to everyone who worked on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. Deputy Council President Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Councilmember Hall here. Just wanted to quickly say, I'm feeling really good about our transition to a fee-based model. I'm thrilled that we get to continue to support our youth and our adults who might not otherwise have the means to participate in our Parks and Rec programs. I want to thank our Parks and Community Services staff for really, taking a step back and asking themselves, how can we and how do we do better in this space? And I love that. So thank you very much, Director Watling, for leading such a great crew. This policy, as we've discussed previously, is definitely rooted in equity. It removes a family cap, and the transition to a fee-based model means we'll be able to be more mindful of the individual need we're seeing out in the community. We'll also be able to reassess and pivot as we study the data like that on youth participation after our first year using the new model. So I'm very excited and I'll be voting aye.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Council President Walsh.
Thank you. I also wanted to just voice my support for this. I think this is a great way to move our community forward, be responsive for the community that we have and the community we want to support. And I'm looking forward to the data that comes off of this, how we're able to really look at the need and all of that. I think this also just demonstrates that we don't just have a Parks and Recreation department. We have a Parks and Community Services department, and this is just one way that they are helping to serve the community, and seeing the two of those together and how it delivers just this amazing opportunity, I think is just great, great opportunity and great testimony to the staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Walsh. I'm not seeing any other comments at this time, so I will hand this over to the City Clerk, who can proceed with a roll call vote.
Starting with Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
Council President Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
Councilmember Joe.
Aye.
Councilmember Martz.
Aye.
The motion passes 7 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Watling and Melissa, who didn't even get a chance to turn her camera on, but thank you both for being here. The next item under regular business is AB 8317. It is the 2022 proposed docket of comprehensive plan and zoning amendments. This item was before Planning Policy Committee, where the Planning Policy Committee made a recommendation to the council that is different than what the administration originally brought. So the administration has adjusted our recommendation to reflect Planning Policy Committee's thoughts and ideas, which is the request is that you do not approve the addition of those items to the docket. Senior Planner Kristen Leeson will be making a presentation and can provide some more information. But again, I'd like to reiterate that this is not about whether this rezone has merit or does not have merit, or whether or not the rezone whether or not the rezone is approved. This is about whether or not to add it to a list of items to look at. So Kristen, you're up.
I almost forgot to unmute. Good evening. Can you see my screen? Okay. I'm Kristen Leeson. I am a senior planner with the Community Planning and Development Group. And yes, tonight we are talking about the 2022 docket of proposed comprehensive land and zoning map amendments. So the actions for tonight is that I will present the proposed docket, and in theory, the City Council will take action on the docket. As a reminder, a little background, comprehensive plans may be amended once a year. There are a few exceptions, but overall, they may be amended once a year. And a docket, before we can start processing any of the amendments, a docket or list of proposed amendments must be approved before any research can start. And this ensures holistic consideration so that we can see how one proposed amendment may impact another proposed amendment. We look at it, as it says, holistically. So as the mayor has aptly pointed out a couple of times, I don't need this slide. This is a recommendation regarding a list of amendments to be processed and researched. This is not a recommendation regarding the amendments themselves. So on this year's docket, we have 3 proposed amendments, and I'm going to walk through each of those. The first is from Our Savior Lutheran Church. They are almost 3.5 acres, the site that they are looking at. The current land use designation is low density residential, and they're requesting multifamily residential. And the existing zoning is single family small lot, and they are requesting multifamily high. So as you can see, I believe Mr. Koenigsmark mentioned that they own 2 properties. It's here on Front Street South, and there's Wildwood Boulevard over here. And they own these 2 properties right here. This one is zoned single family small lot. That is the property for which they are requesting the rezone. And this one is zoned multifamily high. The second rezone request is actually a staff request. During our 2021 comprehensive plan amendments, a rezone was made and a correction needs to be made to that. So right now, this property right here, it is zoned, or the land use designation is community facilities. And we are requesting that the land use designation be multifamily residential. The existing zoning is community facilities recreation, and we're requesting that that be village residential. So as a explanation, you may recall in 2019, this entire parcel that's outlined in blue was dedicated by the owners of Anthology to the city to become a park. During the planning process, I realized that this parcel right here, which was part of the blue, actually contains a drainage vault and really should have been connected or stayed with Anthology and not included as part of the park. So while we were doing the rezoning process, or just before it, this piece where there was a lot line adjustment to move this piece to be part of this parcel, but we were not aware of this change, and the rezone was approved, making this community facilities recreation, and really it needs to go back to village residential to avoid split zoning on this one parcel. Last parcel is Wildwood. It is almost 4 acres. It is this long parcel right here and the little piece at the bottom. Its land use designation is currently low density residential, and they're requesting multifamily residential land use designation. It is also single family small lot zoning, and they are requesting multifamily medium zoning. So just to give you an idea of where this property is located, here's the property and this little parcel down here as well. And for point of reference, this is the church parcel that is being requested for a rezone as well. So should the docket move forward this year, you all are seeing it tonight, the staff would research the proposed amendments from March through August. In September, the Planning Policy Commission would have their first opportunity to review the proposed amendments. In October, the Planning Policy Commission would hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to council. In November, the council would get to see the proposed recommendation and what staff has found during a study session. And in December, the council would take action. So the council has several options regarding a recommendation. You can approve the docket as presented, and we would move forward with it this year. You could move one or more items to a following year for these to be researched then. If there's something that you think that really needs to be included in the comprehensive plan amendments this year, you can add one or more items to the docket, and you can just not approve it. And then this would not be looked at. So that is my presentation.
So Kristen, I know that you did have a couple of council questions today by email that provided a little more context about maybe thought process that the council might use and the interrelation between PPC and the council action tonight. So I wonder if you could address those as well.
Sure. So let's see, I have my list of questions that came up here. I apologize, they got out of order. One had to do, well, let's see, I'll step back and I'll just talk about process. So one was, do we have criteria for the docket? And the answer is no, we have a process for the docket. And the process is that an application, a complete application is submitted by a deadline, which is January 31st of the second public meeting by the Planning Policy Commission in January. And then if the council decides to include these items on the docket, then the applicant pays a fee. So that's the process. What we do have criteria for are rezones when those come in. Now that's still something, both of these items we would like to clean up and clarify and during our Title 18 update. But there is a process and there are criteria for the rezone. So if these are approved, then we would look at those on the docket. Mayor, you're muted.
So for council members that may not have gone through a rezone proposal before, this will come back to them after the criteria have been applied by staff and presented to planning policy and a recommendation is received. So the question before council tonight is just to proceed on doing those next steps.
That's correct.
Great. Okay, so let's open it up for questions. And I'll keep my eye on the chat to see if there are any questions. And the motion is also in the chat as well. We can move to the motion and we can have some discussion within the motion. So if anybody is interested in preparing the motion. Councilmember Dumichel. I'm so glad you did that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It was my turn to do it. I'm sorry. All right. I would like to offer an alternate motion. I move to approve the 2022 docket of proposed comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments as presented.
And is there a second? And if you could indicate in the chat. Councilmember Ray.
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the docket as originally proposed with the 3 rezones on. I will so the motion on the floor, it's been moved and seconded to approve the 2022 docket of proposed comprehensive planning and zoning map amendments as presented. And I will allow the motion maker, Councilmember Dumichel, to provide some comments.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pauly. So first of all, I want to express appreciation for the Planning Policy Commission's work. As Mr. Bresco said, this motion was not made lightly. I usually hope to honor the work that's done on behalf of our boards and commissions for the community. And I personally so appreciate the time and thought that goes into each of our board and commissions products that come to us fully vetted and analyzed. And I also want to express appreciation for the work being done by the Community Planning and Development Department staff and their thorough responses to our questions. However, I am proposing that we move these comprehensive plan docket items forward because they meet urgent needs in our community. For the past 2 years, this council and city have proved over and over again that we can build planes and fly them at the same time. The Our Savior Lutheran Church proposal will provide much needed relief to an essential humanitarian service in our community. And I don't believe we can tell the Food and Clothing Bank to wait another 2 years to find out if this is a possible solution to their space needs. By not moving their application forward for consideration, we in effect kill this important developing partnership that will serve an ever-growing population of people in need of food, clothing, and support. In addition, both the Wildwood proposal for missing middle housing and Our Savior longer range proposal for affordable housing speak to the current crisis in housing and homelessness. The Puget Sound region is emerging as the most expensive housing market in the United States, due in part to a huge gap in available housing stock. We need to at least consider proposals for increased housing stock, not hinder them, as we grapple with the housing crisis. Both applications are complete and were submitted before deadline, which are the basic requirements for consideration. And as Mayor Pauly has pointed out, consideration is the salient point. Just a reminder that what we're doing is placing items on a docket for consideration. When that consideration or analysis is complete, the docket items will return to the Planning and Policy Commission this fall and then to this council in November. The council will then have a second opportunity to consider these proposals for either approval or rejection. I would like to note that at least 2 planning and policy commissioners requested that the message be conveyed to us that their vote against forwarding the docket was not related to the quality or content of the applications, but related more to the workload faced by the Community Planning and Development Department. Another important note is that Commissioner Voice expressed concern about the traffic impacts on Front Street from the proposed rezoning. Since both Commissioner Voice and I live on Front Street, close to the proposed Our Savior project, I understand his concerns, although I don't think traffic impacts should play a role in whether or not we move the docket forward tonight for consideration. That will be something that will be looked at later on, but right now we are just considering whether to move these forward for consideration. However, if we do move these items forward on the docket tonight, I would like to see more information when these items are returned to us about potential traffic impacts and variables and how those may or may not be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Some questions that could be explored are the changing traffic patterns on Front Street following COVID impacts, food and clothing bank scheduling plans, the impacts of proposed new transit routes arriving in early 2023, including impacts to the Route 271 schedule, and traffic impacts in relationship to the Central Issaquah Plan, the Mobility Master Plan, and so forth. So to wrap up, instead of delaying these items for a year or more, I suggest that the council take a look at staffing needs in the Community Planning and Development Department. The applicants fulfilled all of their obligations by timely filing complete applications for consideration. I don't think we can stop serving the needs of our community while we rewrite Title 18. Again, we have to be able to do both. We have to fly the plane while we're building the new one. And if our staffing levels are not deep enough to complete all of these tasks, let's see what steps we might take to ease the burden on our staff. But let's not block important projects from review. I hope that you'll support this motion that I made, and thank you for listening. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. I have a lot of people signed up for comments. I'm just going to go to the second first and see if Councilmember Ray would like to make any comments.
I'll wait. Thank you.
Great. Let's go to Deputy Council President Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pauly. I think Councilmember DiMichele and I are very largely on the same wavelength here. I'm seeing tonight's action as really more of an administrative one than a policy-based one. I look at this year's docket. I see that all the applicants submitted everything they needed to submit. I see that they submitted everything on time, and with that, I think they're entitled to, in the very least, our consideration. So I feel compelled to, approve the docket, to allow staff to review and determine its consistency with our current comp plan, and to have a more comprehensive policy-based discussion later in the year, as been our practice previously. I also was able to watch the PPC discussion of tonight's docket. I want to thank them too for highlighting some really important questions and concerns for the administration and for City Council to consider later this fall. And based on that discussion, there were some considerations I'd like to see Council visit again when it's appropriate later this year. So what I was thinking was, are these projects compatible with our city's growth strategy, aka the Central Issaquah Plan, which was mentioned earlier? Will these projects support our new housing and growth targets, housing and job growth targets? Will these projects, are they consistent with the vision of the Mobility Master Plan, with the Housing Strategy Work Plan, with the upcoming Human Services Strategic Plan? This conversation about Title 18, I don't know if I'm comfortable saying yet that we can build and fly the plane at the same time, but I certainly think that that's something we need to talk about later this year for sure. And on top of that, is it consistent with our comp plan as it is right now? And then I also just wanted to quickly share how much I appreciate the enthusiasm and the passion of the speakers we heard from earlier. Thank you so much for your commitment to our community. And with that, those are my comments.
I actually muted myself when I was already unmuted. Thank you, DCP Hall. I'm going to move to Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My comments are similar to Deputy Council President Hall. I formerly served on the Planning Policy Commission, and I served with several of the commissioners. And I really appreciate their work. I watched the meeting. I also read their minutes, and then I also went back, after all of that, I went back and watched our last discussion on this last year, where we had an amendment that we were split on, and it failed to remove one of the items from the docket. But we had a very similar conversation about what criteria there were, and the criteria that are clear are for the consideration of the rezone. And ultimately, we approved the docket last year. One difference, I think, for us and for the Planning Policy Commission is we do have information through questions that were sent in today that we have been advised by our city attorney to make sure that we aren't doing anything that could be considered arbitrary, and without a lack of, or with a lack of clear guidance and guidelines. I think it would be difficult to be very careful about that. So I think that should be a big consideration for when we revise Title 18 to make this a clear process, not just for us, but for the Planning Policy Commission, so we're on the same page, and also for the applicants. I think it's not very surprising, in fact, that we might come to a different conclusion tonight than Planning Policy, since we don't have a cleared shared basis for making this decision, which is kind of the unfortunate part, but which hopefully will be addressed with Title 18. I did want to make one additional comment, which is that I noticed the Planning Policy Commission was split on their, or they were not unanimous in their recommendation. And I appreciated reading both the minority and the majority opinions on this. And the minority opinion from the commissioner who voted against not docketing, so voted to docket the items, was Commissioner Monahan, who stated that any action at this time with the lack of standards and guidelines might be considered arbitrary in the absence of clear legislative guidance as codified in Title 18. Submitted applications as presented by staff should be docketed at this early stage. So that was how he articulated his point from the Planning Policy Commission, and then also stated that applicants have followed current rules and items should be docketed. So I did ultimately, after weighing all of the different viewpoints, come to that conclusion. And again, it isn't, I think, on the merits of the applications at this point. There were a lot of concerns that were raised that I think are very valid concerns, that we will need to assess and work through, as well as the merits of the projects that are being proposed. But we will do that at a later stage once we have the staff report and more information. So again, I wanted to thank the Planning Policy Commission, and I will be supportive of this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Great comments, everyone. Not seeing anybody else signed up for comments. The motion that's on the floor is to approve the 2022 docket of proposed comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments as presented. And I'll have the city clerk do the roll call vote.
Starting with Council President Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Hall.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
Councilmember Joe.
Aye.
Councilmember Martz.
Aye.
Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you, City Clerk. That passes unanimously. I'd like to thank Council for that very thoughtful conversation about the work of our boards and commissions. Just in case people don't know who are watching, they are all volunteer. They are not paid. They are just concerned residents who want to be part of the process. And we want to be mindful and respectful of all the work. So thank you, Kristen. And we are going to move on to our last item this evening, which is good of the order. And if you have something, please indicate in the chat. And while I'm waiting to see who does, I will talk a little bit about some upcoming meetings. The March 1st City Council study session has potential agenda items that include City Council structure options and the religious and cultural calendar. March 7th regular council meeting has potential agenda items that include the Human Services Strategic Plan and Capital Finance Community Task Force recommendation reports. And I will head over to the notes. Let's go to Councilmember Hunt, followed by Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to alert Council to a letter that was drafted by Sustainability Manager Stacy Vin McKinstry, which would be a letter that we would submit to the Puget Sound Energy regarding their clean Puget Sound Energy's Clean Energy Implementation Plan, or CEIP. And the letter requests several modifications to that plan that would align better with our climate action plan that was recently adopted by the city. So I wanted to alert the council about that. And if you would like to sign on to this letter with me, please let me know and we can go ahead and get those comments into Puget Sound Energy. I also wanted to add that Mayor Polly and I serve on a K4C outreach committee, and the K4C is also submitting a letter that is largely aligned with recommendations regarding this plan. So I think we are aligned there in our advocacy efforts. And they are also submitting another letter regarding the Washington State Commercial Energy Code. So this aligns well, I think, with our other advocacy efforts. And if you are interested in signing on to the Issaquah specific letter, please let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Hunt. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sent a note out to my fellow council members on the 9th. And this is kind of an acronym fest, but there is the PSRC Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, which is in work. An RTP is needed to qualify for federal funding. So no capacity project that is not in the RTP can get federal funding. The PSRC Transportation Planning Board, TPB, is being asked to provide feedback on the RTP. Our own Mayor Polly is on the TPB. So at the Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee meeting this month, it was asked that cities sort of look to provide their nearest TPB member with feedback. And so what I was hoping when I sent out that note to everybody is that they would take a look. And I said at the time that at this meeting, during the good of the order, I'd be going to solicit feedback on the RTP so that the mayor could provide that feedback at the TPB. So hopefully that's not too confusing. So I also sort of wrote down some of the notes from the conversation that we had at the PIC about some of the elements going in or that went into that draft RTP. So I will basically open it up now if anybody has feedback that they want to provide to the mayor as she goes to represent at the TPD.
Thank you, Councilmember Martz. That was like super council geeky wonky. This is why we do what we do. I just wanted to add to it that staff member Stephen Padua is supporting staff for both the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board and the Puget Sound Council Transportation Policy Board. And we are focusing very much on the public comment that's going to come in very shortly, and whether or not the regional transportation plan addresses or explains why they're not addressing public comment. And that's a super important piece that I'll be watching, since we're a city at the urban growth boundary. And what happens just outside the boundary makes a huge difference to the city of Issaquah in terms of how do people from Southeast King County get to work and how do they get home at night. And that was not addressed significantly last time. So we're going to be watchdogging that as well. It's a very significant document. But even if there are some just high level, make sure certain things are taken into consideration, that would be great for Councilmember Martz and I to hear. Councilmember DiMichele.
So I'm not absolutely sure of the criteria. I did, Stephen Padua did send me the list of projects that are included in the plan, and I noticed that Newport Way project is on that list, but our over underpass project is not. And so I guess my question though is, does it meet the criteria for inclusion? And if it does, can we include it so that we do become eligible for federal funds, as Councilmember Martz stated? So that's my question. I think we should, if it meets the criteria for inclusion.
That's a great question. What we will do is get some comments back from Stephen Padua and also our engineering team to find out where that project is. It may not be far enough along to be included, but if it is, then we will let the council know and we can bring that back up at good of the order next time. Good comment. Council Member Martz.
Yeah, I'll just point out, and I mentioned in my email, that there is still 45 billion in unfunded projects on that list. I assume that number reflects qualified unfunded projects. The good news is that's better than the 2040 plan. But maybe the mayor can explain to TPB what the undercrossing would mean, overcrossing would mean for local transportation, particularly Issaquah and our surrounding neighbors, and help make the argument for that. But I think there's lots of well-qualified things that are unfortunately not currently in this plan. Thanks.
Right. Thank you for that. We are really trying to emphasize how land use and transportation and the environment are interconnected. And in order for the Central Issaquah plan to work, it doesn't work without the over-under crossing. And it doesn't work without transit. So all of these are interconnected and we need to make sure that comes across. You can also send your comments to Councilmember Martz by email, and we will make sure that we summarize whatever transpires by email at good of the order. Not seeing any other comments on that. Thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Martz. I had one more item, and I will be sending out a document to the City Council with some, I'm calling them King County District 3 city issues, that a list that 7 of us mayors have put together that we are going to be talking quarterly with King County Councilmember Sarah Perry about, and checking in on progress. It's a very general list. I'll send it to you by email to get your comments on other items that might be added. We will be adding 2 cities to King County District 3. We'll be adding Woodinville and Skykomish. And so we will then change our group of mayors meetups to 9 mayors with King County Council Member Perry, and I will update after those meetings as to where we are moving the needle on some of our issues. In general, they would be things such as financial support for behavioral and mental health services, addressing flooding in a much more comprehensive way, transportation projects that are needed either within our community or adjacent to our community in order to achieve our development goals, in particular in Central Issaquah plan. So I'll send that out to you and then we can discuss it at the next good of the order. I think will be before we have our first meetup with Councilmember Perry. Any other items for good of the order today? Okay. As I had mentioned earlier, there is no executive session this evening, so there being no further business, our council meeting tonight is adjourned at 8:32. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.